Raise some
Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change. Time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.
Welcome back, Patriots, to another edition of the Raising Cain Show. Tonight, we're going to talk about a topic that I think is very timely. If you ever wondered if what you're hearing on TV is the truth, or if it is absolute fraud, or what you see being put out there by the media or by the various industries, we're going to get into that topic tonight, and we've got a great guest. But like you guys know that I always like to run our commercials so that we don't have any interruptions. So I'm going to do that now. When we come back, I'll introduce our guest. Stay with us.
Heard of Q Broadcast? It's taking the world by storm. People are cutting the cord to their high cable bills and moving away from streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, and others for something better. Q Broadcast. For just $60 a month, you'll get access to every channel you could ever want, including HBO, Cinemax, and Starz. And the best part? There are no contracts, no hidden fees, and you're free to cancel anytime. With Q Broadcast, you can enjoy streaming live TV, movies, and top series on up to 5 devices at once. Whether you're at home or on the go, Q Broadcast makes sure your entertainment is always at your fingertips. Imagine being able to watch all your favorite channels from anywhere, anytime, without any restrictions. We're talking about thousands of movies, hundreds of TV series, and a huge library of live channels, all in one place. And don't forget video on demand and pay-per-view events. Those are included at no extra cost, so you'll never miss a big event again. Now, take a second and think about your current cable bill. You're probably paying anywhere between $100 and $300 every month, locked into long-term contracts and hit with surprise rate increases. With Q Broadcast, that's a thing of the past. It's just $60 a month. No contracts, no extra fees, no hidden costs, and no price hikes. Why juggle multiple subscriptions like Netflix, Hulu, and cable when Q Broadcast gives you everything you need in one convenient package? People everywhere are switching to Q Broadcast, saving money and getting more content than ever before. So, what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description and sign up for Q Broadcast today. Just $60 a month, no contracts, no hidden fees. It's time to take control of your entertainment and start streaming smarter.
Since 2017, 150,000 farms have shut down. Working farmland has been reduced by 21 million acres. The system has been crippling the remaining farmers, forcing some to adopt nefarious farming techniques, by pumping hormones and other performance-enhancing drugs into their cows so they can survive in crammed feedlots. Or the farmers are forced to jump ship and sell to land-hoarding, profit-chasing agricultural oligarchies, who use their billions of dollars to crush the competition and increase your family's dependence on their manufactured food. What could possibly go wrong? The family farm will soon be a thing of the past, unless you do something. You can. That's why there's From the Farm, an industry-disrupting platform that connects consumers directly with local farmers, which means you can buy fresh, non-factory farm food, and you'll know exactly where your food came from and how it was raised. For the first time in nearly 100 years, independent farms will have a way to not only survive, but thrive. From the Farm was founded by A.J. Richards, an active homesteader, and Brooke Entz, a CrossFit Games athlete and an Amazonian warrior in the movies Wonder Woman and Justice League. She clearly has a passion for healthy food and a healthy lifestyle. Since both AJ and Brooke come from generations of ranchers and farmers, they know what they're talking about. We can't do this alone. We need the strength of the American people behind us. Help us build a new food system that combines the wisdom of the past with the technology of the future. Investing in From the Farm isn't just a financial decision. It's an investment into our future, our small family farms, and our food sovereignty. Invest today.
Welcome back to the Raising Cain Show, folks. We're joined by John Davidson, a veteran journalist, filmmaker, and CEO of Magic Feather Inc. With over 30 years of experience inside major networks like CNN, ABC, and Discovery, John has seen the machinery of media from the inside out. He's also a fierce truth seeker, the man behind the award-winning documentary Epidemic of Fraud, available at www.epidemicoffraud.com, and an advisor or on the advisory board member for the Free Press Foundation. Folks, tonight we're going to dive into Trump's bold statements about the pharmaceutical industry, the Tylenol overdose trend, the spreading across TikTok, and we're going to talk about the bigger picture of medical fraud, some election integrity, cybersecurity threats. We're going to get into a lot of different things that and what the media's role is in fueling hoaxes. Buckle up. This conversation is going to pull the curtain back on the narratives shaping America today. John, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Nate, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. So, John, maybe a good place to start is tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of you started in the world of media and Hollywood and all of that. How did you survive that and still be somebody that's seeking truth?
I started out at CNN in '97 and kind of worked my way through the newsroom for a few years, then went off to entertainment because there was no money in news, especially in 1997. So after I was in entertainment for a while, working for Turner Broadcasting, I said, hey, you know what? If you're a butcher, you go where they cut meat. So I moved from Atlanta to Los Angeles and started freelancing for a few different networks. And so I did these interesting kind of marketing jobs for a few years. Then I started my own company. And once that kind of took off, I had a really great career for about 20 years making more marketing and special effects for shows and networks and studios. And so I would do if there was a movie tie-in with a network, I would do shoots and things like that with big Hollywood stars and things like that. So it was a good career, but unfortunately, at one point, I was asked to promote Fauci and the vaccines in 2021, and I couldn't do it. I knew at that point I had started working on a preliminary version of Epidemic of Fraud, and I just knew that there was something really wrong with everything, with the way the news was covering anything Trump said. It was almost like they were under some sort of spell, and I don't know. I couldn't participate in it, so I backed out and kind of nuked my career, and then dedicated the next 2 or 3 years building a better version of Epidemic of Fraud and released that in 2024. And the great thing about it is, although it didn't make any money and not a lot of donations, I did make great connections with incredible lawyers like Warner Mendenhall and Todd Callender and Brad Geyer from former feds. And honestly, tons more. Jamie Scher, she's pursued remdesivir lawsuits. She has a potential lawsuit against ABC for promoting remdesivir without acknowledging it was sponsored. There's so many attorneys that I've connected with, and they liked the movie because I really tried to, I don't say these things as much as I just ask a few questions and then factually break down every argument. And I have hundreds of sources in the bibliography so that, don't take my word for it. Do your own homework, man. And since then, I've been doing Broken Truth, where I do interviews with whatever's topical at the moment, or, whatever God puts in front of me, right? So that's kind of how I do it. And it's been an interesting journey to go from the guy that never, in marketing, you don't touch anything that's potentially a hot topic, right? You
Right.
avoid that like the plague.
Yeah.
And instead of running, now I run headfirst into it. And it's an interesting experience. I mean, I wouldn't want to change what happened because it really was sort of a soul awakening for me. But
It's interesting you mentioned that you use the term soul awakening because when I think about Hollywood or the media, oftentimes in a lot of these movie stars and singers and whatnot, I can't help but feel like some of them have sold their soul to the devil. I mean, it's it's uncanny. And I think for some of them it's a conscious choice, but for others, I think it's a gradual move in that direction where they they crush their own conscience over and over and
yeah,
over and over again until the point where they lose themselves, they lose their soul. And so it's refreshing to hear about somebody going the opposite direction who has worked in major media in Hollywood. Um, there is a problem in the fact that we've got so much, whether it is the media or whether it is social media now or movies and entertainment that impacts and influences our culture, and the people that seem to get the most attention, the people who are really running the show in those industries,
right.
really are not. They are working against God. I mean, that's just there's no other way to put it. They're
I
working for the other side.
I definitely, especially in the last 5 years,
Yeah,
you could see it. If
yeah,
you have gone through the last 5 years and think this is totally normal, I
yeah.
don't know what to say for you, man. I mean, the world went insane, and
And
the
yep. And COVID, I think, was kind of like that was a big wake up call for a lot of people.
yeah,
They either saw what was going on. It's interesting you mentioned how, something was seriously wrong. I kind of had that same experience. Now, when I saw that the media, that the drug companies, that the doctors and hospitals and the government
yeah,
were all locked shoulder to shoulder, long, arm in arm, singing kumbaya, oh, everybody it was like this weird, it was almost like they were hypnotized.
yeah.
Like they couldn't, people couldn't see what I saw,
That's why I
which
say it's like
was
a
so
spell,
obvious.
like a curse.
Yeah, it really is. And so I think I think there has been a shift. I think it has culminated, quite honestly, with the assassination of Charlie Kirk has truly been a turning point. Ironically,
Right.
his death, we are seeing. I think people who are on the fence are realizing they got to get off the fence and they got to start speaking the truth. And but when we look at what has happened, you're right. Like the last 5 years has been the just it's almost like Satan took his mask off and just decided to parade around in the public unashamed. And I look at like a lot of what goes on today, even after Charlie Kirk's assassination, and seeing people unashamedly
Yeah.
wishing death on him and his family, and on anybody that listens to him, and people praising the shooter, and just insane things that just 10 years ago you wouldn't hear people ever put on. Even if they thought it, they knew they had at least the sense to know that they probably shouldn't put that online.
Yeah.
But there is it, and you had people in the media that were even saying crazy things. And
Yeah.
but we've seen almost like a separation of the sheep from the goats, the wheat from the
Wheat from the
tares.
to the shaft.
You
Yeah.
know, it really has kind of exposed a lot of the rot. And there are some liberals who actually do take a step back. Maybe they disagree with Charlie Kirk on everything, but they took a step back and said, "Whoa, I want nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
I want nothing to do with this crazy insanity." And one of those people is I look at as Bill Maher.
I was just thinking that. Yeah.
He has been somebody who has. He's certainly not a Christian. He is certainly a leftist, a liberal, but he has seen the writing on the wall and seeing the insanity. There's some other, like John Stewart's another one I know that has spoken out, at times on some of the insanity. And so there does seem to be this shifting that is happening where even amongst the liberals, people are realizing, those that still have some, bit of their soul left are waking up and realizing that something is seriously wrong in our country.
Yeah, it's the more we learn about what went on under the Obama administration, with Comey and those guys, the Russiagate stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not just a fake story.
Yeah.
That was that destabilized the government. Arguably, maybe that's not a bad thing, but it destabilized the administration, and subverted the will of the people.
Yeah.
And that's there are consequences for that.
Well, the whole narrative, the Russia narrative, it was driven by bad actors within the intelligence community and within the justice system. But it was propagated by the media, by the mainstream media. And, it's like you expect members of Congress to lie. I think everybody expects politicians to lie. The famous joke, how do you know when a politician's lying? Their lips are moving.
Right.
You don't expect that. I think we do now, but we didn't used to expect that from the media, from news anchors.
That's a big point in my movie. One thing I just couldn't believe was that if you took COVID at face value, there's a potential biological attack on the United States. We were facing, what we thought might be a cyanide breeze. Millions might die. There was a huge concern. And as you see in the movie, they played partisan even then.
Yeah.
It's like they got trapped in their own method of objecting to anything Trump said. Even if he said something that was about one of the most basic, safe medications in human history, they would do it just to spite him. And that's why I feel like it was almost a spell or a curse or something, because these people could not support that. And now you learn about the money and the pharmaceutical influence, and maybe they weren't really even elected in some instances. So this is just I never thought that in a crisis, potential warfare scenario, our people, even our politicians, would do what they did.
Yeah.
And betray everything just to score points.
I remember seeing a pastor who had his church get together, and they were trying to follow the rules. I think it was in Chicago or somewhere like that. It was in the city. But they had decided to meet in the parking lot, and then they had like a like a shortwave radio broadcaster thing so that people could listen in their cars. The police showed up and wrote tickets for everybody that was sitting in their car, and because they came and congregated in the parking lot. And I remember thinking to myself, how in the world did we get to a place where the First Amendment was being violated, like openly and willfully? And I realized fear. They found the hot button. They found that they could get people and motivate them to do crazy things with fear. I do feel like it was a social experiment that was perpetrated on the American people. And and I have to wonder, like, it does seem like what we're seeing and what we've been seeing has been supernatural. It's more than just
Yep.
a few people who are ideologically driven. It's beyond that. When you got mothers that are willing to basically harm their babies by taking Tylenol, simply because Trump said don't do it.
Right.
It's honestly, I don't know how we don't go out and arrest those women for child abuse and self harm, but it's crazy. It's an illness. Trump derangement syndrome is a real thing. There's no doubt about it. But I do have to wonder though, how much of this is propagated by our enemies, the enemies of America, who know that they could not beat us in a conventional war, but have decided and have weaseled their way in, almost like worm tongue, in The Lord of the Rings. And they're whispering in the ears of the American people through the media, through entertainment, through the universities, through their professors, in every area that has any kind of influence over us. They have been brainwashing the people, over a period of years. And it goes way back beyond 5 years. This goes back, I remember reading a book that was written in 1914, and it warned about the Bolsheviks.
Mm.
And it said that it was a call to action by Americans to stand up, and fight against the Bolsheviks, who were infiltrating our schools, our public schools, and who were infiltrating our universities at that time, 1914. And they saw what was coming in the form of, this socialist mind virus,
Right.
that has perpetrated its way into our country. So it's been a long path, but it has certainly accelerated. It hit a critical, peak, I guess, in the last 5 years of just acceleration that like nothing we've seen.
Humanity has within it a small percentage, maybe not even that small, of people who are on the personality disorder spectrum.
Hmm.
Lying, narcissists, borderline personality, histrionic personality. Like, these people are different than normal people without those issues. And think of it like this: in Solomon and the woman whose child died, and another woman who had a child, her baby was stolen, and Solomon wanted to cut the baby in half
Hmm.
to figure out who the real mother was, and one of them was willing to allow that to happen. That's a great example. The Bible's trying to tell you, like, hey, some of
Yeah.
you are crazy, some of you are out of your mind, and you will do horrible things without conscience or thought. And
Yeah.
how do you deal with that in society? I mean, I would say that probably is, I think, 10% of women that come into ERs, don't quote me on this, have some sort of personality disorder. They take up a lot of time, a lot of resources, and unfortunately, when it comes to social media, it provides them with a quick fix for attention that amplifies maybe voices that don't really represent the people. I spent a lot of time on a road trip recently. We go all over the country. We love our road trips. And seeing America, I don't think that this is as common as we think it is, based on just what you see in television and social media. We
Sure.
know that TV's captured. We know that the networks are pretty much bought and paid for. I mean, we knew, and when I worked there, even advertising ruled the roost. Who was the big advertiser for most networks, especially
Drug
news?
companies. Yeah.
Pharmaceutical companies. And then, Biden started pushing out community core through HHS, which was essentially funding propaganda across every spectrum of media: radio, television, print. If you can look at the partners that were receiving cash from HHS to do this, and it's like everybody.
Yeah.
And that's a
I
drug
wonder
in
how
and of
much of that,
itself.
by the way, I think is still happening because, um, you know, you look at, I was at Walmart the other day
Hmm.
and they had a big old sign up, oh, come get your free COVID
Right.
vaccine. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? They're still pushing this crap? How is this possible? We've have multiple studies now that have come out that have shown that number one, the COVID vaccine does not stop
Yeah.
COVID from spreading and does more harm than it does good.
Yep.
How these things have not been pulled yet, I still don't understand that.
If you pull it, then the people who object to anything Trump says, or the people who are, I don't know, maybe their cognitive biases locked them into getting booster after booster until they win the lottery, so to speak. Um,
It's a very
those
appropriate.
people, yeah, those people will riot in the streets if they don't have access to their shots. You know, I listen to FDA advisory committee meetings, and you hear the public comments. Now, some of those comments seem a little staged, but some of them are parents that even 3 years after COVID were still locking their kids up, never letting a 2-year-old out because they were afraid they might catch a cold. You know, this is a we've created some sort of mental illness, and we've maybe identified how susceptible some of us are to this type of propaganda. I mean, you can
You know,
explore
when you
Mockingbird too.
yeah, you and I grew up in a generation. I don't know how old you are, but I'm 50 years old, and in my when I was a kid, it was not uncommon for when you found out a kid in the neighborhood had chicken pox. My mom brought me over there to get it.
Right.
And that was considered and I got a week off of school, and I was irritated and itchy and for a week, but that's how they dealt with it.
Yeah.
And we played in the dirt with our hands. I had dirt under my fingernails, and it was just that was the way life was growing up in the 80s and in the 90s even. And
Hmm.
something changed. Something
Yeah.
changed.
It's we've created a generation of hypochondriacs.
Yeah.
And maybe that's part of the advertising issue. You know, only United States and New Zealand allow pharmaceutical ads on network television
Yeah. Well,
or in
what
media.
cracks me up about those ads is I love the ones where it goes down the list of the one you can
Yeah.
always tell the ones that are related to immune suppressing, because those are the worst ones, right? Like the ones for psoriasis and other things. And things like, oh, could cause liver cancer and pancreatic cancer and all of these other, things, it could cause death. It's like, sign me up. Who seriously is
Right.
listening to this stuff? It's like, does their mind just block out everything they just heard? I don't know.
Yeah, and that's why I had friends that were in Valtrex commercials in LA. So that was always fun to remind them of. But
Yeah,
I these ads they pay a lot of the bills at the networks. Network
sure.
television is it's not what it was when I was at CNN. It's when I was at CNN, we had bureaus, we had offices all over the planet. People were out and about.
Yeah,
I thought properly reporting what was going on around them. Now we are hearing that maybe some of these things were not as properly covered as they should have been.
yeah.
Um,
I
you know, so,
remember, I remember back in the day when CNN was like, that's where you went to get the world news. If
yeah,
you wanted to know what was going on, anything outside of your local news station, you went to
yeah,
CNN because that was the source. And I think it's the world has become, in some ways, it's become much smaller through social
hmm,
media, because now we can see, you know, somebody posting a video of what actually happened,
right,
and nobody, and so, but it amazes me how much the media still tries to gaslight us, right? I can't help
yeah,
but think about the anchor standing out in front of the city, Minneapolis or whatever, on fire, and he's standing there. Oh, they're mostly peaceful protests.
right,
And the whole damn city's on fire behind him. It's like, are you kidding me? Are you blind, dude? Don't don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining, right?
right. I think the gaslighting has gotten pretty extreme.
Yeah.
And hate to refer to the movie, but I even put a segment in there for gaslighting. I wanted you to know the history of mass manipulation with Mockingbird. I wanted you to understand gaslighting. I wanted you to understand emotional transference. There was so much I was trying to cram into that film that,
Yeah.
it's nice because I can break it into segments and release those separately, but I wanted it to have a full standalone capacity. And the gaslighting is real. And I mean, how many people are suffering in this country because
Hmm.
they're being gaslit? It causes physical effects.
Yeah.
You suffer when what you're told is real does not match what your perceptions tell you is real.
Yeah. Well, let's
Yeah.
talk about that for a minute. You mentioned Mockingbird, and there's probably a lot of people watch this show that know what that is, but there might be some that don't.
Mhm.
So, what exactly is that? Where does that come from? Where does that terminology come from? The Mockingbird media.
Mockingbird was a supposed program created in the 50s to help the United States fight the Cold War against Russia and China, I guess, but primarily the Soviet Union. And it was a method of coordination with news organizations and media to sort of control the narrative. Um, so I I can't specifically say which topics would have been covered, but probably space race would have been something important. Cuban Missile Crisis probably had some involvement. Anything that would have involved sort of trying to send a message through media, either to control the population's perception of something or to influence other countries. We thought we had a free, independent media. Boy, were we wrong.
Yeah.
Mockingbird is. It's been discussed. I think Joe Biden in the 70s or 80s was involved in a committee in the Senate where there were actually hearings about it. It's something they don't like to talk about at the intelligence agencies, as you probably know. What's your take on it? You were in the beast for a while.
So I remember, yeah, right. So it's interesting. Years ago, I had, I say years ago, I'm talking like 20, 30 years ago,
Hmm.
before the classified network was very compartmentalized. Okay. If you had access to the top secret network, you pretty much could see anything, get to anything. I mean, there might have been a few things that were, kind of kept you out of it. But I remember reading something, and it was a novel, and it was very interesting. It had some very interesting things in it, and I just thought there's no way that that is true, because it claimed at the end of the book that they had done research, and that our own government was involved in things that now have come out as being true, have been declassified, but at that time seemed so just outrageous. And some of that included propaganda, human intelligence, um, all kinds of crazy things. And I remember seeing that and not being able to say anything about it for like 20 years, right? So it was not surprising to me, but I was watching Infowars, right? Back in the day, and this was at a time when George Bush was president, and I couldn't stand. I was a hardcore Republican at the time, and I thought, oh, Alex Jones was like ripping on George Bush, all the time, talking about how he was his father was, the director of the CIA, and he couldn't be trusted, and they were saying all these things, and what seemed like conspiracy theories, and who would have known he was telling the truth, and and so I remember listening to something that he said, and he was talking about the Mockingbird media. And I remember him talking about something about the John Birch Society, which was like an anti-communist organization.
Yeah.
So I went to their website and I checked out, and they had a video, black and white, audio recording. You could hardly see the video that much, but basically it was a media a meeting with the media and with basically the CIA and other members of the intelligence community thanking the media for cooperating with them in
Hmm.
Operation Mockingbird Media. This was like, it was a legit thing. And but so many Americans don't know about this. They have no idea.
Well, in some scenarios, you want that. In many scenarios, I forget which one it was, but there was a Tom Clancy book where there was an active hot war scenario, and the fleet, U.S. fleet, wanted to make the enemy think that they were in one place, but they were actually somewhere else,
Yeah.
and it worked.
Yeah. Actually, I saw CNN do that.
Hmm.
When I was was stationed overseas, I was in Korea, and the Gulf War. They were doing. We were no, I'm sorry. What I was not overseas at the time. I was actually working for DISA, Defense Information Systems Agency, out of National Capital Region, and I worked on a system called Autodin, which was basically like the internet for top secret stuff. And when information would come through the system, it would get printed out on a teletype. So I was like literally reading the teletype as it's coming out. And this was like during the Gulf War.
Yeah.
And what was crazy was I'm watching the news and they're talking about CNN saying, that, yeah, we're, our airborne rangers, are coming up from so and so or whatever. But I'm watching, and it's talking about how they're flying, over airspace over Turkey, and the media is saying, oh yeah, that that Turkey has banned us, from being able to use their airspace. But but I'm reading, it's like that's exact. They're doing helo jumps in, over Iraq, flying in over, Turkish airspace, and I was just like, wow. That isn't just like a mistake or a rumor. That's a blatant lie of misdirection.
Yeah.
So you're right.
I
I've
mean, but
seen
don't
that.
you want that? I don't want Americans dying.
No, no,
If
and
they're
I
at
do think
war,
that that's a good thing, during certain circumstances.
but when
I
it comes
honestly,
to other things, it's maybe not so great.
yeah,
When it's
yeah,
politically charged, that's really bad.
yeah. Well, when you look at what's happened with the vitriol in this country and the polarization and the people who are basically pushing this notion that, Trump is a Nazi and this kind of nonsense,
Yeah.
you have to wonder, like, I mean, seriously, that goes beyond just freedom of speech at that point. That is a dog whistle. That is saying, oh, yeah, it's perfectly acceptable to, try and assassinate this guy. And when you see that kind of language being put out there, right, that is the quintessential yelling fire in a crowded theater, right?
Right.
The one thing that I'm really curious about, and I don't remember if you talked about this in the film or not, but the Smith-Month Modernization Act
I
versus
didn't
the
go in.
Smith-Month Act.
So I didn't go into it. However, I'm aware of it.
Yeah. So the Smith-Month Act, which, if I'm not mistaken, was passed as a result of the Church Commission and the findings of our own government propagandizing the people, basically said you can't use government tax dollars to propagandize the American people.
Right.
And during the Obama administration, they passed a bill called the Smith-Month Modernization Act. And of course, it was passed by Democrats and and signed into law by Obama. But basically, what it did was it actually reversed the Smith-Month Act, and it made it so that the government can propagandize the American people once more with our own tax dollars. And it's still in existence to this day. It still exists.
Right.
So it is a problem. I think it has a lot to do with why things were justified to lie to us about COVID. You think about the kinds of things that, Fauci said. I mean, we got him lying to our faces when he said out of, in previously, I think like very early on, he said, yeah, these paper masks don't do anything.
Right.
That it's just more to make people feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Those are his words. I'm paraphrasing them, but it's almost exactly that. And then later, you see him talking about the importance of masking and maybe even double or triple masking when the micron size of these viruses compared, it'd be like something that's like this small, right? And the pores in these masks are like this big. It ain't stopping no virus. It's
Right.
ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to me, that was a perfect example of the government just flat out lying to us. But when they began working, and we learned through the Twitter files, when Schollenberger started going through and was given access, by Elon Musk to look through the Twitter files, and we discovered that the government was actually paying Twitter to go in and change stories and, and basically, basically change a story and say that it was Russian disinformation when in fact it was truthful, or go in there and ban certain accounts because they were posting things like research studies that went against the government narrative. We found that out. I mean, I knew that was going on, but I didn't know it was being directed by the government. I thought it was being directed by maybe the elites or the far left that, just hated Trump. And it turns out the government was actually involved.
Right.
How much do you think the government, maybe it's not the government that we elect, but the so-called shadow government is involved in directing the news?
I knew people in the news, and if you had asked me in 97 if I thought the government was involved in coverage, I mean, I knew that the head of CNN, Tom Johnson, could call up, people, and then we had other presidents at CNN that came on. Rick Kaplan, I think, was one of them. He was friends with Clinton. He could call him up. And this was during the Monica Lewinsky scandal. So, there was always a friendly relationship there, but it certainly didn't result in lack of coverage of the Lewinsky situation, because, boy, it was the most annoying story I ever saw. For years, it just went on and on and on.
Yeah. We got somebody trolling us in here. I want to ask some of
yeah.
our moderators if you guys would get this guy kicked off of our stream here. Disgusting.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. But yeah, well, it's really friendly. Anyway, so we've got people in the networks that are very liberal, and they often run the networks. And I was talking to a guy the other day, and I maybe mentioned this in our other show, but he said that he was at Disney, and eventually it got so he was the only white guy there, and one of the other employees said, "Oh, so you're the token white guy left?" And he was like, "What? Like, how did this even? What's going on here?" And since that happened, Disney Channel puts out shows about witches and zombies and vampires and all manner of evil, but they don't really ever push out concepts of like Christian kids.
Sure.
In a woke school.
That's an interesting point. If you were looking at things just purely from a marketing perspective, right? And I've seen different people talk about this. What are the highest grossing films that are produced? They're family, G-rated movies. Some of the highest grossing in terms of like just overall, the bulk of movies that make money. So why in the world would they put out some of the garbage that they put out and not do more? Like, if it's clearly not about driving, it's not money that's driving the content entirely. There's clearly a narrative. I remember maybe 10 years ago, you couldn't watch a show without them putting some LGBTQ stuff in it. You know, it started that long ago. Like they started pushing the whole, gay narrative, the whole trans narrative in every sitcom and every TV show that was out there. And I just thought it was obvious to me that it was an agenda, that it was not just about, wanting to have a show that caters to a certain crowd.
I it's strange. I sort of think back to the life that I've led and the experience that I've had, and growing up in backwoods Southeast. One of my best friends' mom was lesbian,
Mhm.
and they had a pretty stable family. Heck, they were more stable than some of the other families where we had alcoholics and all kinds of divorces and everything else. And it gave me a perspective, and they had no representation. There was no show for them to watch where they could feel accepted in society. And I don't I don't want to discredit
Sure.
those folks who their proclivities maybe don't match yours or mine, but I think Modern Family was a pretty good show in terms of trying to sort of adequately represent a little bit, but without going too far.
Yeah. And I agree. I think that like I've had very close friends of mine, that were gay or lesbian, and and I didn't have a problem. They weren't trying to throw it in my face all the time, or trying to. There was no agenda there. They just were living their lives. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, dude,
And
I've
but
worked in Hollywood, art director. I mean,
yep,
everybody was gay. Like,
absolutely.
it's
But
all
it
good.
seems it does seem though like there was something that shifted
Yeah,
in Hollywood
it did.
where it became something that wasn't like 10% of the shows. Like you could not watch a show. At one point, every series, had to show either two guys, kissing or two women kissing at some point, and they'd get you hooked. So you're watching the show, and then season two, they'd start throwing all that stuff in there. And and again, it was more than just trying to be representative of the entire American populace. It was clearly, trying to push something. And so it seems like that is starting to shift.
Yeah,
And
I did a Kurt interview with some folks. I don't know when, but that was the thing. Like you'd fall in love with the show, have a couple of good episodes, and then about 4 episodes in,
right. Yep.
here's your messaging.
Yeah,
We're
or
not having fun
you,
anymore.
you see the same thing with them, like I remember one of the you seeing some really great shows that just were awesome comedies, right? First season, second season, third season, and they start bashing on Christianity, bashing
Yeah.
on the idea of faith, like really pushing this atheism ideology, big time. And it was like it became less about the comedy and more you know about pushing an agenda. That I guess that's really what it boils down to. It's like there's a difference between, a good production
Yeah.
that may like I watch comedians that certainly are not pushing Christian ideology, but they're hilarious and I love watching them and they crack me up. Um, but then there's guys that then there's shows that you watch and it's like there's clearly an agenda behind it. I mean, this is why the Christian,
Yeah.
movie producers have their own production companies because they are clearly pushing an agenda and they don't have any bones about it. They make that clear. But in the mainstream, it seems like there has been agendas that are social agendas, right, being pushed at different times.
I think it goes. I think there are two aspects at this. Art always pushes the envelope on some
Yeah,
level.
yeah, true.
The best artists often have very wild lives. I certainly did. I mean, I was a Hollywood producer in L.A. for a couple of years. Now I didn't do anything crazy, but you know, I dated, and then you have some that are just like very wild out there, you know. And they push the envelope, but at the same time, sometimes it's not a bad thing. Think about like what was the show with Bruce Lee in it, where he was Kato? Was it the Green Lantern? No, what was that? Um, anyway, he was in a show, and it was an Asian American main character in a
Hmm.
show, and that was very avant garde for the time. Ellen was the first lesbian in a show, and she had a very big hit show in her sitcom. And I thought Ellen was really funny at first.
Oh yeah.
But you know, if you don't have a grounding, maybe that moral compass, maybe you know it's God or Jesus or whoever, you know, helps keep you rooted in good and evil. You can go down this slippery slope, and the next thing you know, you're censoring people, you're taking away human rights, you're violating human rights, you're, you know, globalization is now your god, and you get lost. So yes, there has been some sort of agenda in it that's beyond art, because the movies that suck. I mean, they took Star Wars at Disney and they made The Acolyte, which was space lesbian witches, and it was terrible, and
Yeah.
everybody hates them now for that. Even the last Superman, which
Yeah.
I was really excited about because I love Guardians of the Galaxy, the first movie, and you know Chris Pratt is a great guy. I worked with him on a shoot, and I was really excited to see what the director would do with that. And it just felt petty in some
Hmm.
instances and a little silly. Like they sort of took like this sort of iconic, almost American brand, right? I mean, Superman's American through and through, born in or raised in Kansas, born in Krypton. And then they replace it with now this concept that his parents, who were good people who wanted him to be a savior for humanity, but actually it's just he wants you to have about 1,000 wives and breed as much as you can to extend the species from Krypton. Like, what the heck? Did we need that?
Yeah, that's kind of weird, but
But
it is interesting though to see
we're twisting
how.
our icons.
Yeah,
We're
you're
getting
right.
rid of everything that we could be proud of. We want to discredit all of the things. And I've been thinking lately about this. What do we have as a nation? What's your goal if you're the president? Your goal is to make people proud of your country. You know, because that's where they're going to want to unite together. They want to be a solid, united force of goodness.
Yeah.
And instead, what we've got now is we're destroying everything. We destroy our statues. I mean, Superman is a statue of media, or of our, you know, I,
Sure.
he was a hero in our our mythology, and we've now discredited that. Maybe you know he's still a
Yeah.
good guy, but you know if you date him, he's gonna try to get you pregnant.
Yeah, well, you know, was it there's become a meme now about Netflix adaptations, right?
Right.
You know, I've seen how many of them, and it's hilarious because you're right. They're like they twist things to push an agenda that has nothing to do with the story.
But
And
here's how you identify it. If it doesn't
yeah,
make money, it's an agenda.
yeah, that's true.
Great example is Top Gun Maverick. That made
Hmm.
bank, and you have to
Yeah.
wonder if the executives at Universal were really sad about it.
Well, it's
Because you
interesting
know,
because the Chinese tried to get them to change the patch, on the to remove the Taiwan patch or whatever off of the jacket. There were some other things that they wanted them to change, and they were going to, and then they said, "Nah, we're not going to." And they at the last minute said, "No, we're not changing this to satisfy your political agenda." And it actually, that little bit of controversy, I think, really boosted the movie.
yeah,
So sometimes some controversy is not a bad thing. Look, if we aren't this is the thing that I think was so great about like Charlie Kirk, for example, is he'd go on campus and he'd say the thing that everybody was thinking, but nobody was willing to talk about.
Right.
And, and unfortunately it cost him his life because there are people that are so intolerant and so triggered that they just can't handle, debating. They're weak. They can't debate. And so instead they turn to violence.
Mm.
I do think that it's good to be challenged, occasionally. It's good to actually, um, my wife, her and I were very different, like complete opposites when it comes to personality. She doesn't like getting into debates with people. She really doesn't like politics all that much, which is hilarious because I made her my campaign manager
Mm.
during my campaign, and but she was awesome because she was supporting me. But she doesn't like, I don't think, debates because of what she sees, how it makes her, what it turns her into.
Yeah.
She would rather just be peaceful and all that. But for me, I love debate and I love debating about topics that are even controversial, even things that might be controversial to my faith. I'm okay with. I mean, it's like, look, um, I think it's good to be challenged and it's good to have your ideas challenged because if you can't defend your position, then maybe you do need to reconsider it. And I'm
Sure.
okay with that. I think that if it wasn't for, I went through some hard times, some really difficult times in life,
Yeah.
and especially when I joined the army, because I would say before being in the army, I was a very sensitive person, and I still am. I'll admit it. I cry at movies, that are emotional and capture me, in that way. But I grow some thick skin when I joined the army, and because I'd never been in that kind of barracks, or what do you call it?
Yeah.
It's almost like a fraternity in some ways, when you're going through basic training and all of that. You're in a barracks with a bunch of other dudes, and they like to haze you, and I wasn't used to that, and so I had to grow some thick skin, and then having the military is still one of those places. Well, at least it was when I was in, that was still very much male dominated, and so it was not uncommon to get cussed out, and verbally assaulted. And so I had to learn to deal with that. And I'm glad I went through that because I came
Right.
out of it a much stronger person. And I have no regrets in that regard. And I do think that there is something about our society today, and young people in particular, where they have lost a lot of their intellectual resilience and their ability to be able to use critical thinking and learn to be tolerant and offended, at the same time. It's funny. I had a friend who was hardcore Democrat. I mean, about as left as they get.
Yeah.
And there was a time where we could not talk during politics season.
Yeah.
Like, because I was fearful that we might get, in a fist fight because he was very antagonistic. But we still loved each other, and we would be like, "All right, dude, don't even call me for the next 2 months because I just don't wanna get pissed at you." And so but we would get together after the election, no matter who won, and we would have a beer together and just, remind each other, that we still cared about one another, even though we were about as opposite as it gets politically. And it seems like our country is not there anymore. And I do think that the media has a part to play in that, especially
Right.
social media, because we're finding this weird phenomenon of how AI, creates this for you page that basically keeps sending you what it thinks you want, right?
Right.
So it's like a self replicating echo chamber,
Hmm.
and I do think that is a problem because it's not even organic at all. It's
It's not.
AI driven.
And the AI is, it's all measuring how long do you, not even if you don't like a thing, how long do you rest on the image. and it uses that as part of the algorithm to feed you more of what you look at, even if you don't like it, right?
Hmm.
But then again, there's like a spiritual element to everything going on, and I think of it like the Holy Ghost in the machine, right?
Mm.
There have been just times where I've, experienced things that were beyond what I could explain in technology or other things, and with that in mind, I don't know. I feel like we're gonna be okay, but as if you're in the cities right now, it could be a rocky road for the next couple years,
Yeah.
because those places are where the worst ideas seem to take root.
Yeah.
And like with the
That's
news,
why I live in the country.
yeah, the news misrepresents far too much, both
Yeah.
sides.
Hmm.
I get frustrated when I see leftists, psycho leftists called out, in headlines and whatnot, because, well, that's a person we're never going to be able to reach
Mm.
now. And isn't that what we're supposed to try to do, right? If you have faith, is to extend an olive branch. Now you
Yeah.
can't always in war. You cannot do that. If someone is trying to burn down your house,
Yeah.
you kick his ass.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay, so that's an interesting concept. It feels to me like one of the things that has changed is that in a world where I think like the just the nature of man, right, is to call crap out in people, especially if their behavior is, you know, weak, or if they're, and I'm talking about mostly from the standpoint of men. I don't even want to try to speak for women in this, but for men, there's expectations, right? Of what does it mean to be manly? What does it mean to be a man? And there is a certain amount of social pressure, right? To live up to and to conform. And there's really only two ways that I see people having success. They either conform or they completely go against the norm. And those are usually artists, you know, and they don't give a crap what other people think about them, and they live their lives how they want to live them. And
Yeah.
both of those to me, can be healthy, right? You have a certain number, a percentage of people that have to go against the grain. But it seems like we have, as a society, have said, you know what? Let's not tell, Jimmy that he's being a mama's boy anymore. If
Right.
he wants to believe that he's a cat and you shit in a litter box, then we're gonna be okay with that, and we're just gonna accept that. And what it reminds me of is it reminds me of a generation, and this may offend some people that are listening, and I apologize. I don't mean to offend you, really, but it reminds me of a generation of men being raised by their moms and no
Yeah.
father figure in their life to redirect them. Because what I got from my mom was, a lot of love and a lot of understanding and a lot of compassion. And what I got from my father was, son, this is what's going to be expected of you in life. And you better start, you know, you do this, getting your shit together.
Right.
And so by the time I graduated, I was a little bit of that person that wanted to conform to what that image of what a man is, but also I was also a little bit of that other person that said, hey, you know what? I'm going my own way. I'm not going to college. And why? Because you told me I should go to college. you know, I'm going to go move out on my own. I want to live my life how I want to live it and see what life is like. And it was tough and it
Yeah.
was difficult. And my dad, to this day, he cracks up because I called him about a year after I left home and said, you know what, Dad? I'm just calling to thank you for being so strict on me. And he said he just about fell out of his chair. But because I felt like it prepared me for life, it made me realize that nothing good came easy or free.
Right.
And I do think that we've got a generation that I think has been taught wrong in that regard.
Well, what is it? Good times make weak men.
Mm.
Weak time or hard times make
Yeah,
strong
yeah.
men.
Yep.
I think we've gone through some unusually difficult times the last few years for some of us.
Yeah.
So hopefully it's
COVID
toughened
being
us
one
up a
of
bit.
them.
But I personally love the life of being an artist. I love creative design and animation and special effects and directing and thinking about shots and creating funny scenes or action scenes. What I mean, these were all. This was fun. I love it. I hope that this comes back into my life soon because I miss it.
Mm.
And it definitely seems like now enough people have taken up the mantle, like you and others, that maybe I don't need to do this in the same way I've been doing it. I think we still, a horrible thing has happened. A horrible series of events have occurred.
Hmm.
But we have to start rebuilding hopeful, positive, or even heroic messaging, right? Like how do we create the new brands for the next generation? That's kind of some stuff I want to work on. Children's
Yeah.
shows. They're not necessarily overtly Christian. 'Cause there are a lot of different faiths out there,
Hmm.
but they're principled. We need to start building a principled society and helping ground people, even if they can't have a compass rooted in faith. At least it could be in
In
wisdom
reason,
that
at a
exists. Yeah.
minimum. It's like, no, yeah, absolutely. I do think that we've got to. I think in the documentary that you did, the movies that you do are important because there's a lot of information out there, and I think we're used to taking in information through certain mediums, and movies is one of the greatest ways. Especially if somebody is does a compelling job of making you kind of feel and understand, right? Books are another. Um, Music is a great way. I think about like Bob Marley. Man, think about, he I lived in Hawaii for about 3 years,
Nice.
and there's a culture there. There's a lot of, there's good things and bad things about every culture, but one of the good things about Hawaii is they see the importance of family. Ohana, they call it,
Hmm.
and of spending time with your family. It's more important to get out on the beach and do some surfing with your kids than it is
Your
to live in
kickies.
a fine house.
Yeah.
And so it was funny. It was a funny part of our lives where we lived in a shack. I mean, I'm talking, this was like an old army housing that the walls were so thin that if I punched my fist through the wall, my hand would be outside. That's how it was just a piece of plywood. And that's it. We had those like, those slat windows, right? And there was no air conditioning. It was 900 square foot house and like $1,200 a month rent. But we lived close to the beach. And every day after work, I'd go out there with my kids and go surfing. And man, it was an awesome time. And I think about like the music was even all about driving you towards family and towards love and love making and all of that. It was just all centered around that. And really pushed against the kind of violence and the kind of narrative that you see in a lot of music today.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty cool. And I miss that.
Yeah, the Hawaiian life is pretty solid.
I mean,
I
it's
got
funny
family that
because,
lives there.
Hawaii is very Democrat. I mean,
Right.
probably, but it's it's a different kind of Democrat, right? I think it's, I think it's more Democrat because a lot of people just don't care about politics,
Yeah.
you know?
Most of my wife's friends there, they don't even
Yeah.
vote. They don't
Yeah.
care.
Yeah. They don't. They don't. As long as they can, spend some time with their family and, get out and see the ocean, everybody's happy.
Well, I think they don't vote because most of them are just looking for parking.
There's some truth there.
Just drive in circles.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Well, I had the best commute ever though.
Oh,
I
nice.
lived in Iroquois Point, which was across Pearl Harbor on opposite
Right.
of the base, and I was able to kayak to work every day,
What?
and it was the best commute ever. It was fantastic.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I, but it's funny. I lived in Japan for about 3 years prior to that, and I learned awesome things from them. One of the things that was one of the most amazing conversations I ever had was I was on the beach hanging out with my Japanese friends. They were in a surfing club. We did windsurfing, and I joined the club so I could get to know people because I lived on Mirakaigon Beach, down from Yokosuka Naval Base, and I was having a conversation one time around the barbecue, and we're all doing shots of, you know, I think it was what was it, sochu, and eating food that I probably would never normally eat.
Right.
Sardines, I think they were like just barbecuing them, and we were eating them whole. And I asked somebody, I said, "What is it about what's the difference between the way that you Japanese think and the way us Americans think?" I said, "It's you guys celebrate Halloween, you celebrate Christmas, you have Christian weddings, you have Buddhist funerals, you got a Shinto ceremony, for your children's 5-year, festival or whatever." I said, "What do you see different about us?" I said, "Because you clearly your minds see the world, perceive it differently than the way that the West does." And one of them really succinctly, I think kind of nailed it. He said, "Americans are very opinionated." And what he meant, he was doing his best to translate into English what he was trying to say, but what he was trying to say was that we have to have an answer for everything. And if you think about Western philosophy, right, it's very different than the East. The East, they're very fatalistic. They just accept things. It's just the way it's. They have a saying for it in Japan, shogunai, which means like can't be helped. But in the West, we're all about trying to discover the meaning of life, the meaning of why these things happen. We're always trying to look for meaning in everything. And I learned a valuable lesson in that because when I was there for the earthquake and the tsunami and everything, and it was just very different. And watching their news, very different. They had an English news station, but it was owned by the government.
Yeah.
And so I saw them. It was a very different perspective. It reminded me of old CNN, actually.
Hmm.
It was very good at just kind of breaking down the news going on around the world and in the country.
Yep.
But in times of crisis, it was total propaganda designed to keep people calm.
Right. I mean, dude, I used to work at Airport Network for CNN, which
Yeah.
was basically CNN minus plane crashes.
Oh my
Which
gosh,
you can
that's
imagine.
hilarious. Yeah.
It was relevant, and all the
Yeah,
airports paid
yeah.
them to do it.
Wow. That's interesting.
And actually, I think my experience there is what made me aware that something was not being properly reported in
Yeah.
early 2020. I mean, I was freaking out. I was on the other side of the spectrum. I was trying to get Presbyterian churches to lock down. I didn't want mom going to church. Like there was a whole thing. And then when
Mhm.
I realized like, hey, these people are just straight up lying to us.
Yeah.
That's when I snapped back the other direction, and I was mad that
Yeah.
I had been
Yeah.
tricked, and I've been on the warpath ever since.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that for a minute because, and I know we've kind of gone on a whole lot of different topics tonight, and it's been a very fun conversation. But I do want to get into a little bit about, your movie, and then also too about what you're doing on Broken Truth TV.
Hmm.
So tell me about Truth TV, because I know that's kind of your latest thing, right?
Yeah, so the original name for my documentary when I first made it in 2020 was Broken Truth. And I just pretty much pulled that out of a hat at the last second. But I liked the name, and it kind of stuck, and I paid like $5,000 for the domain name, and I said, well, I guess I should use it for something. And you know, like I had made the original version of the movie, sort of released it, but did it anonymously, and then took it offline. And I said I need to fix some things. And then in 2022, I went to CPAC, um, and met some friends there, and met a guy named Clinton Ohlers, who you've had on recently, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And we had great conversations, and I said, we should just record these. And we started doing that, and then I said, well, you should get some guests. And then I think I found a guy whose son needed a kidney transplant, and the hospital in Cleveland was not allowing him to do that without having the vaccine.
Mm.
And this was, March 2022. And so I interviewed him, and his name was Dane Donaldson, and learned more about his story. And I was like, this is really unfair. And then I saw these videos of Maddie DeGarry after her vaccine, and I saw this commercial of her struggling to walk and even just swallow at that point. And I thought I should find out if this is real. This seems preposterous.
Mm-hmm.
And so I reached out to Stephanie, Maddie's mom, on LinkedIn, I think, and I said, "Would you want to do an interview with a complete rando?" And she said, "Of course, let's go." So I did this interview. Clinton and I interviewed Stephanie, and that one kind of tied into what I was already thinking was going on. But then I don't know, I just started doing more and more and more, and then people would call me and go, "Oh, you should interview this lady." And also a lot of these things were almost sort of supernaturally guided.
Yeah.
In the strangest ways, like divine appointment kind of level. And I would take a road trip, and halfway across my road trip, someone would call me, and I would be near their house, and I was like, well, I can actually be your place in 2 hours. Is this weird? And we're all shocked that I just happen to be in their area when they reach out to me. So we do these interviews, and it just sort of snowballed into sort of a consistent thing, or semi-consistent thing, not as maybe consistent as you do it. And then and then I said, okay, I need to go back and finish this movie and actually make it and put it on IMDb and really go through the process and swing hard. And I really thought maybe it would be even better if I put the movie out there through film festivals. So I submitted a ton of money that we got in donations to put it in film festivals. Most of them rejected it. A few of them brought it in. Some of them even gave me awards, like Malibu Film Festival and Jersey Shore Film Festival. Some festival creators actually called me almost crying. They were like, "This is everything that I've been hoping to see." It just speaks to my experience, and so that was kind of heartening. Then I made friends with a lot of these great attorneys, like I mentioned earlier, and Freedom Council, which is a collection of about 300 attorneys that are fighting all sorts of different battles, and they support each other. And that's been kind of where we're at now with Broken Truth TV. For example, this week, Nicole Suratek from American Frontline Nurses got a call from someone whose wife had overdosed on acetaminophen. She was pregnant, and he didn't know what to do, and she had to explain to him, the hospital wasn't lying to him. She's dying. Once you hit a certain level of acetaminophen poisoning, you don't recover. And so she was kind of shook by that, and she recorded a video in gym clothes, and tells everybody what happened. And she's been attacked for bringing it up, for saying that this was a real thing. People are trying to find proof of it. And I helped her do a little background checks just to see if it was a legit number and things like that. And it's legit enough. You can't prove it. The guy doesn't want to talk. He's going through a disaster. His life is over as he knew it. Why would he want to talk about some dumb thing his wife did, despite Trump? So that was Nicole's video went viral. We needed to get out there. She needed to say something publicly about it. Didn't really want to go out there with CNN or any of the networks because, they can spin things. So it was a safe place for her to go. And I had done as much research to verify what I could. But I'm not calling the guy. I'm not
Yeah.
tracking down a hospital. That's, you know what, acetaminophen poisoning is a legit thing. There are statistics you can get at the CDC, I believe. You don't have to take my word for it. We did get Dr. Sabine Hazen to
Does it
also
destroy the liver? I can't remember what the.
it can, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I
And
thought.
I think you have to get NAC via an IV within like 14 hours of overdose, or your liver doesn't come back.
Yeah.
And it is a pretty slow and painful death, which is awful. So, you know, that's kind of an interesting story. I do weekly shows with Warner Mendenhall, who is a co-founder of Freedom Council, and he's represented Brooke Jackson in her lawsuit against Pfizer, or a company that was doing trials for Pfizer for clinical fraud.
Mm.
And just a lot of great attorneys in that organization. So Freedom Council's show that I do on Monday tries to highlight a lot of their battles.
Now, is
And successes.
where's the best place for people to catch your show?
BrokenTruth.tv.
Okay.
But it's on YouTube and Rumble, and I might get 20.
I was gonna say that I run this on YouTube and I get like very few people from YouTube. I think I have 4 people watching. Hey, thank you 4 people who are watching from YouTube.
Nice.
You guys are awesome.
Nice.
In Facebook, you know, I think I've got 2 people on Facebook watching the show. So thank you guys.
You know,
Most of it is actually X is where I get the most views, as well as on Rumble.
Yeah. You know, my BrokenTruth.tv is based off on the Substack platform.
Okay.
Which is very convenient. I like it a little better than WordPress.
Yeah.
You know, you're a tech guy, so you know the WordPress lag is real, and I detest clicking a button and waiting for a page load.
Yeah. Well, and WordPress has a lot of the cybersecurity vulnerabilities as well.
Oh my gosh, it's nothing but Swiss cheese. So that's what I do right now. I also did a lot of the early interviews with Katie Pazantny. She's the woman with the ostrich farm in.
Oh yeah, the one that they were removing the ostriches or whatever, they were going to kill them.
Yeah, so you know that's kind of blown up. So I'm almost maybe like, you know, the front line of digging up stories that might become popular later. You know, that's actually kind of cool. It's like being a beta tester for, is this story going to work or not?
Yeah.
We've done some events. Some friends of mine have asked me to help out with events. So we did a Thrive in 25 event in West Palm Beach back in June. And it was just sort of a hodgepodge of, you know, some hospital protocol victims or vaccine injured people. There were also J6ers there. There were, you know, people with chlorine dioxide stories. Like, there's just a random mix.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was pretty fun. And these events, they go on all the time. It's interesting, this sort of counterculture movement that's sprung out of, you know, the corpse of COVID.
Yeah. You know, and on that note, it's funny because you got people that have come from all walks of life that have found something in common. And now I'm beginning to see some friction because there are some differences too, right? Like, you know, there are folks that have, you know, they believe in certain conspiracies that I don't subscribe to.
Right.
And in fact, that I think are preposterous.
Right.
But, you know, I totally get it. There is a level of distrust right now with the government and with America that people have thrown the baby out with the bathwater in many cases, you know, and so it's hard to reconcile that sometimes.
It sucks, man. I mean, it's hard to know what is true, what is proof. I mean, I dig through old documents, historical books. I mean, I've gone into libraries and just researched for days, because that's, you know, you can modify even scanned books.
Yeah, well, you know, and unfortunately with AI now, you can't even trust a video anymore because it's unbelievable what they can do. I remember
Well,
after the
yeah.
after the shooting, seeing videos popping up all over, claiming, "Oh, this movie star stood up for," I'm just like, "Oh, man, not again. Seriously?" Because I knew it was AI. I mean, I've kind of gotten to the
Yeah.
point now where I can spot it pretty easily. And of course, I do follow that, that monicum of if it's too good to be true, it probably is not true. So,
I believe that AI video generation has been around way longer than we
I
knew.
think you're right.
And I think that there's a very good chance that maybe some of these keystone news or events that we've been um, trained to react to maybe have been part of that.
Hmm.
I don't have direct proof, but there were certain things that have occurred that had some red flags for me.
Yeah,
And I'll dig in and I'll start going into 911 calls and doing FOIA requests for things and start trying to
sure.
layer a video with the audio from a 911 call. And if I find a discrepancy, it's a red flag.
Well, there are some discrepancies I can tell you that were interesting in that, um, like I was working at the FBI when the Las Vegas shooting occurred,
Mm,
and of course, that was all hands on deck investigating that. And I was watching all of the conspiracy theories about, what really happened, and this couldn't be, the information. What I'll say is that a lot of the stuff that I heard that people were suggesting was just plain old crap. I mean, it
right.
was, totally not there. But there was things there was information missing
Yeah.
in the investigation. There were videos I saw with my own eyes that people took from their cell phone. It was clearly a cell phone video, and it happened like they came out like immediately after. And this was, a little bit before the AI craze that was available to everybody.
Right.
And there were videos, a couple videos that people had taken of muzzle flashes coming from lower floors.
Yeah.
And those videos were never looked at by the FBI. How do I know? Because I looked at everything that they were looking at. I had access to it and I was looking at it. And it was surprising to me. I read all of the statements. They didn't find anything that made any sense. Nothing. This guy that, was supposedly the shooter, I mean, they really had no motive. His wife didn't know, didn't see any kind of motive at all. And it just didn't make sense. And so, so there was a lot of, so to me, it seemed like less of a cover up and more of a botched investigation because maybe they had bias going into the investigation. And that is a real thing that happens.
You know,
So I don't know.
a society has to have some level of blindness to things that go on in the subtext,
Yeah.
or you'll fall apart. If we understood how much clandestine research we did on biological weapons, Fort Detrick, and things like that, people
I
would
worked
lose
at
their
Fort
minds.
Detrick. Yeah, I was stationed at that was where I was stationed when I got out of the military. And
Wow.
yeah, USAMRIID. I was not working at USAMRIID, but they had a building that no longer exists today, but back then, this was 20 years ago, was it was all concreted up because there had been an outbreak of anthrax in the building, and stuff stays alive in the soil for like 50 years or something.
Wow.
Speaking of that, I want to just, since you brought it up, it's kind of an interesting topic because I still don't have answers, but I would like to have this investigated. My brother-in-law sent me an RFI, a request for information, because he had a client that was going to submit something to this, and it had two parts. One part of it was construction, and the other part was cybersecurity, and they didn't have any background in cyber, so he was trying to hook me up with them, and to put in a joint RFI response. This thing was being funded by the Non-Proliferation Disarmament Fund. And what it was asking for is basically they wanted information on, proposals for developing interconnections, network interconnections between basically labs that worked with, and I can't remember the term, but it was like HCGs or something like that. But it basically meant like highly contagious, things
Hmm.
and biological agents and that sort of thing. And there was a massive amount of money that was going to fund this thing, coming from the Non-Proliferation and Disarmament Fund. And what was fascinating was they actually said in there that they have the ability to work outside the approval of Congress, and that their funding had 0-day, what they called 0-day budgets, meaning unlike most federal budgets that if you don't spend the money, it goes back.
Yeah.
Their money they keep getting money, and every year they don't spend it, they can spend it whatever they want. They don't have a specific time frame that they have to spend it in. But all of these labs, they wanted these labs to be able to be like shut down immediately and like sanitized, like within a certain short period of time. And they wanted them all to be networked together, and they were all in Chile, not one of them in the United States. But they said they wanted to do this as a pilot so that it could be replicated with other global partners. So it made me with their other global partners and other partners in other parts of the globe. So it was like, it made me realize, are we just doing biological weapons development in other countries so that we don't violate, our laws?
Right.
This came out, by the way, about 3 or 4 months after Russia invaded the Ukraine, and they went straight for the biological labs that I think it was Victoria Noonan that admitted that it was, biological weapons development stuff that was going on there.
Yep.
So I think this is a much bigger problem. And, and I guess my concern is, if the government lies so that they can do something somewhere else, maybe they got good reasons for it, right? Maybe we know our enemies are developing biological weapons, and we want to have a, equally, what was it, mutually assured destruction, right? But I don't like being lied to, and having our tax dollars going towards things that the American people don't approve. To me, if you believe that we need to have mutually assured destruction, then make the
Yeah.
case and get the American people to stand behind it. And I think I see it as a big problem.
Are you familiar with the SV40 research that was done in Louisiana in the 1960s?
Are you talking about the
Dr. Mary
polio
Fonte?
vaccine
Yeah.
when it was put in there, the simian virus that caused a lot of problems, a lot of death?
Well, there was more than that. We were doing clandestine research with Al Noshner, who was involved in the National Cancer
Oh,
Institute.
I did not know that.
In 1963, spring of 1963, a woman named Judith Ferry Baker was.
Oh,
sort
I
of
do
this-
know her.
Yeah.
I've interviewed her on my show. Yeah, she's an
Okay,
amazing
yeah,
woman.
I have too. So yeah, that whole story. Then you know that.
Yeah.
That was essentially clandestine biological research for a weapon.
Yeah.
To kill Castro allegedly. That's the kind of stuff that goes on that's really concerning, because that was CIA working directly with the mob.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I've also I believe him. I've also interviewed a number of people in that allege involvement in the assassination of JFK.
James
Yep.
Files.
Yep, James
Yeah.
Files, and I believe him 100%. There's too many things that make sense, and there's I think that I think that's has a big reason why a lot of that stuff still hasn't been declassified. I think there's reasons that
Yeah.
the 9/11 Commission files haven't been fully declassified. I think there are things that we will find out that the American people are just not going to be happy with. They're going to be pissed about. So
I don't know if they can release it. I don't know. If there are hints that that links back to other countries,
Yeah.
and the ramifications of that information getting out might be so devastating
Yeah.
that they just can't do it. Even though it may actually be true and horrible, and it should possibly come out, they just won't do it.
Yeah.
They'll come. I mean, they unfortunately they haven't crafted a better narrative.
Yeah.
And
Well, I'll tell you, when I mentioned about what I'd seen, like 20 years ago, there were things that our government was involved with, human program in particular, that I don't think everybody would have thought I was nuts if, first of all, if I had told anybody.
yeah,
But we had funded programs that were doing astral projection and remote viewing
oh yeah,
around the world with great accuracy. And there were
yeah,
things that I read about, some things I still can't talk about because they have not been declassified, that just made me realize that there's way more to the universe that we don't understand.
yeah.
And maybe some people understand, but the masses are kept in the dark about.
I actually tried to contact one of the guys that was part of that program. I
Mhm.
think he's up in Northern California now.
Yeah.
But he didn't respond.
Yeah.
Sometimes you swing and miss.
Yeah, it's interesting. There was a lot of things that the Russians were doing, and we were trying to keep up with them. So that's see, this is the dilemma, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to like weapons development, like you think about the nuclear weapons and things like that. Weather modification. Here's one. Why in the world are we spraying crap in our skies?
Right.
Why has that been going on? Because the Chinese are doing it. That's why.
Did you ever see The Men Who Stare at Goats?
Yeah, that's based on some. That's kind of the stuff that I was alluding to.
Yeah.
So
it's funny. That movie came out, and I was like, oh, I should investigate this more. And then randomly, I get a call from someone or contacted by someone who wanted me to talk about some other movie and about B.B. King, I think. And the producer from that movie was involved in it. And I was like, what?
Mm.
What a strange coincidence that I just watched this movie and I'm fascinated by it. And then suddenly now this person's contacting me. This is all normal.
Did you know these guys they had been trained to where they could actually create out of thin air, out of their mind, formation of clouds?
Yeah, they were calling cloud bursting.
Yeah. It's interesting because, the Bible uses words that they translate in English that sometimes don't really translate well. And the word soothsayer in the King James, when you see that word, it's the literal translation of it was basically one that interprets clouds, right? It's kind of interesting. So it's like, that was like considered witchcraft. But I think it was more when I did a bunch of research into that because I was fascinated by that. I was like, that would make a great title for a show is like, our weathermen, soothsayers, right? But what it was talking about was it wasn't just that they were interpreting clouds, but they were actually causing weather phenomenon and with their minds. So fascinating stuff.
I would have loved to be involved in that program back in the day because creative direction is all about pre-visualization.
Well, there's something about I think there's enough evidence out there that the physical world that we have, it is at least partially manifested on the basis of things that we're thinking, which is why the media is so powerful. Because if it can put into our collective minds a certain ideology or a certain belief that something is going to happen. I mean, there are so many people out there who have studied this phenomenon. whether it's the law of attraction or whatever you want to call it. But there's this idea that our minds are very powerful, and we know that there are brain waves that extend out beyond our body. Some of those can be measured, some of them can't. So who knows?
Are you
You know,
familiar with Schrodinger's cat?
I am. Yep, absolutely.
Those watcher experiments are interesting.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, they are.
we could honestly we could talk about this forever.
Yeah, so we've already been going for an hour and 40 minutes. We're gonna have to do another show and just get into some of
Let's
the
manifest
mysteries. I
another
think
show.
that would be a great show.
All right,
Well,
sounds good.
folks, I want to thank everybody, for listening. We've got about 1,600 people that are on watching right now, and
Nice.
still growing. It's been a great show, and
Sure.
I appreciate having the time just to talk with you and kind of talk about this stuff. But I think, um, I always like to ask the question. We've talked about a lot of different things, but what do you want people to take away from our conversation more than anything?
Um, do your own homework. Learn how to research. We used to be a smarter society, I think, or at least
Mhm.
I thought we were. Don't always trust what the news tells you because they're not always working with your best interests at heart. Even the ones that you think that are on your side,
Mm.
especially those because that's how they sneak something past you.
Yeah. I saw that firsthand. Um, I got heavily involved in election integrity work and was around a lot of different groups of people, and I'm not going to get into naming names and stuff, but I saw a lot of stuff that things that made me go,
Right.
a lot of red herrings, a lot of stories that sounded exciting and sexy and raised a lot of money, but weren't exactly the truth,
Yeah.
or weren't things that could be proven.
Yep.
I did see a lot of things that could be proven, but they weren't as sexy. They weren't as, and I'm this coming at it from a cybersecurity background, right? Um, I saw a lot of other things that had more to do with just, plain old things that anybody could have seen. And that woke me up to the fact that even the people on our side, the people that we trust and the people that we think we can trust, we should not be lazy observers, but we should do our own research. And I appreciate that comment. Well, I always like to end my show with prayer. I think it's an important practice. And so I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Heavenly Father, I thank you, Lord. Thank you for John and for the work that he's doing in getting the truth out there and for talking about difficult subjects that need to be talked about. Lord, I thank you for his creative mind and the creative spirit that he has. Lord, I pray that you would bless it and help him to be able to do the thing that he loves and honor you in doing that. And I pray, God, that you would please wake up our country, help people to not be lazy observers, but to truly dig in and try to find the truth and to question things and not just believe everything that they hear. Lord, I pray for wisdom in our generation, Lord, for wisdom and for the ability to see through the propaganda. And then once we do see the truth, help us to know what to do with that information because sometimes that's a bit scary. Lord, we just pray for our country. We pray for our leaders. We pray for peace in our own nation and peace around the world. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right. Well, one last time, where can people follow you? Where can they catch you? Are you on? I'm sure you're on social media.
Yes. Broken Truth TV on X. And you can find me at Epidemic of Fraud on YouTube, but also epidemicoffraud.com and brokentruth.tv.
Awesome. Well, folks, you heard it here, and it's been a great show. We've talked about a lot of interesting things, but I want to encourage everybody, go out and do your own research, do your own homework. Don't just listen to the media or to the news, even conservatives, and believe everything that's told to you. We have to start taking ownership of what we believe. With that, have a good night and God bless.
God bless.
raise some Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless, day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.